I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, more discussion of a Donald Trump presidency, which has evoked an enormous amount of controversy, much of which has been expressed in rather ugly invectives. Well, one major voice in the American Jewish scene, who's speaking in a calm and reasoned fashion, is the always incisive CEO of the American Jewish Committee, the AJC, David Harris, who joins us now on our JBS phones. David, welcome back to JBS.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure.
David, you put out a statement shortly after the Donald Trump victory. It says, in part, "We fully understand that election periods often divide our nation. Post-election periods should be devoted to uniting us. Presidential candidates may be elected by half the population, but once chosen, they represent the entire country." You then go on to quote President Obama, who says, "It's important for us to let President-elect Trump make his decisions. The American people will judge over the course of the next couple of years whether they like what they see." And then you write, "We agree with this approach." So, first of all, how do you feel about the fact that Donald Trump won this election?
So, Mark, that's an easy one, actually, because I don't have a public view. AJC is a 501c3 organization, which means by law, we neither endorse nor oppose any candidate for office. And I would add, Mark, by temperament, we're not associated with any political party or any individual. AJC is about policies, and our goal in any administration has to be to try and defend and advance our key policy interests as best we can.
I understand. And I understand you have to walk a thin line, and my questions have to somehow allow for that. So I'll ask away, and you'll tell me, you'll answer what you can answer. You know, we had Alan Dershowitz on JBS, and his point was, we must feel that Donald Trump is, quote, everybody's president. So I'm not asking you about Trump or Hillary. I'm asking you, how does the AJC view the American response? Should there be an American response, an American Jewish response to the will of the people when they elect a president? In this instance, it happens to be Donald Trump. 4 years ago and 8 years ago, it was Barack Obama. When Dershowitz says we must feel that Trump is everybody's president, is that something that resonates with you or not?
In large measure, yes, Mark. I mean, again, officially, on behalf of AJC, we have to deal with the cards as they're dealt. It doesn't matter whether any of us would have wished for this outcome or a different outcome. It is what it is, and we keep repeating that to those who still don't grasp it. It is what it is, and for those who want to cry over spilled milk or go into a fetal position or into a catatonic state, you know, that's their right and privilege as individuals, but as an organization that seeks to represent a set of policy interests on behalf of a segment of the Jewish community, we feel we have an obligation to figure out next steps and not think about last steps or sort of freeze or become paralyzed. So what are the next steps? We have a president-elect who, by all accounts, this is not the election of 2000 where it was contested and went to the Supreme Court, where Hillary Clinton very graciously conceded, where no one questions the transparency of what happened. We have a president-elect who's building a team. And an organization like AJC cannot simply suspend our operations for 4 or even 8 years because perhaps some people don't particularly like this administration or the way it's unfolding. We have to figure out how we can most effectively engage the administration as it emerges on the issues of greatest importance to us, while at the same time retaining our independence of thought and action. Mm-hmm. And look, with the Obama administration, we had many points of convergence and we had major points of divergence as well. including especially the Iran nuclear deal, with which I spoke to you in the course of that unfolding set of events.
Yes.
But even when we disagree with the Obama administration on something as consequential as the Iran deal, we always tried to do it in a measured way. We showed respect. We never allowed it to devolve into name-calling or the politics of the personal. Look, it's going to be difficult. I get it. We're in a new space now. The entire nation is. It's a new space. This was unexpected by many, if not most, of the observers and commentators. But it is what it is. And where I agree with Alan Dershowitz is whatever our personal views may be, we want this country to go forward and succeed. And in that respect, we have to hope and pray that President-elect Donald Trump and the team he builds will, in fact, be able to move this country forward in a constructive direction and bring us all along. Not some of us, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
If he does, bravo.
Yes.
If he doesn't, thankfully we live in a democratic nation where in less than 2 years, Mark, less than 2 years, people will go to the polls again for midterm elections, and if they don't like what they see, that's the place to express it.
Exactly.
They did it in 2010 when Barack Obama lost control of both houses of Congress. Let's wait, and we'll see what happens in 2018.
By the way, I believe what you just said is the most responsible, reasoned approach which not only Jews, Americans as a whole should take. And, I said it in the open. One of the reasons why I wanted you on was because irrespective of partisan politics, I wanted somebody to come on who talks reasonably and calmly about what we should do as a nation and as a Jewish community. And I understand I'm putting you in some tricky positions. You'll decide how to handle it. Jonathan Greenblatt is the national director of the ADL. That's just like the AJC. It's a nonprofit Jewish organization. He had no trouble coming out vociferously claiming that Donald Trump is an anti-Semite. Is there anything, I don't care whether you like Donald Trump or you hate Donald Trump, I'm asking you, as you look at the situation objectively, David, are you worrying that Donald Trump is an anti-Semite?
The answer, Mark, is for now, no, that's not high on my list of concerns. There's nothing that tells us from Donald Trump's life experience that he is an anti-Semite, and indeed to the contrary. As everyone now knows, he has a daughter, in fact, clearly one of his beloved children, Ivanka, who has converted to Judaism, and by the way, and embraced Judaism seriously
Yes.
as an observant Jew,
Yes.
with her husband Jared Kushner,
Yep.
and their children, and they go to a modern Orthodox synagogue. And in fact, one of my AJC colleagues' daughters was actually the camp counselor at a Jewish camp for the grandchildren.
Wow.
So it's very hard for me to sort of process the notion that this man who has a daughter and son-in-law who are openly, proudly identified as Jews, and this man who has associated himself with the pro-Israel community on various occasions in his life, at the Salute to Israel parade, that this man is somehow ushering in an anti-Semitic era. There may be many issues to worry about or to wonder about. This is not near the top of my list. And the other thing I would say, Mark, and allow me to be candid with your viewers and your listeners, I'm a little struck by a sense of almost panic and pandemonium among important segments of the Jewish community. Again, I get it. Many of them were staunchly supportive of Hillary Clinton. They don't know Donald Trump, or what they see raises big questions for them. I get all that. But to suddenly call into question the strength and resilience of our nation, or the place of Jews in America, with the distance we've come, and the success we've had in becoming part of the mainstream, as if all of this is going to collapse overnight because of one comment or one appointment, I think may be a bit of an overreaction. I certainly hope I'm right, but AJC doesn't operate on hope. We're going to watch everything as carefully as we can, but we're going to do it in a dispassionate, measured way and not driven by some kind of either partisanship, masquerading as 501c3 nonpartisanship,
Yes.
or some kind of hysteria.
Yes.
Let's take a deep breath. Let's see how this unfolds, and we'll be there. I mean, we'll be there, and there'll be many friends who will be there as well if heaven forbid things begin to unravel. But for the moment, I think that we need a more measured response to the situation unfolding before us.
I so appreciate the way you say it. And again, what has upset me, and it always upsets me if I feel akin to the people who are doing it, it upsets me that there has been a hysteria. And, more than 100 Jewish historians published a letter speaking out on the election of Donald Trump. And here's a piece of what they published. There have been hateful and discriminatory language and threats that have been directed by Donald Trump and his supporters against Muslims, women, Latinos, African Americans, disabled people, LGBT people, and others. Hatred of one minority leads to hatred of all. Passivity and demoralization are luxuries we cannot afford. We stand ready to wage a struggle to defend the constitutional rights and liberties of all Americans. It is not too soon to begin mobilizing in solidarity. David, to what extent does this represent the kind of disappointing rhetoric you've heard? To what extent do you share this perspective?
Obviously, we are passionate pluralists at AJC. We have been for the 110 years of our existence. We understand that America is only as strong as the weakest community, the most vulnerable community. We are in constant touch with partners in just about every one of the communities mentioned in that letter. We have, since November 8th, reached out extensively and frequently to friends, particularly in the Latino community, in the Muslim community. And some of your viewers may have seen that AJC launched what actually may be the only concrete programmatic response, which was the establishment of a Muslim-Jewish Advisory Council, which has gotten, to our pleasant surprise, huge media attention in recent days. So we're reaching out to a whole lot of people to reaffirm our bonds of friendship and solidarity. Yes, but at the same time, Mark, again, the nation has just elected a new president. Whether it was the choice of each of us is irrelevant at the moment. We need to give the president the chance to prove when he says, I will be president of all the people. I may have been elected by half the people, and maybe some of the things I said during the campaign were directed at that half, but now I'm the president of all the people. Is that genuine? Is that just bluster? We need to see come January the 20th, and we need to be vigilant on the one hand, but open-minded on the other hand. If we've been overly optimistic, then it will be time to reconsider the options. But to simply foreclose options now, Mark, as if to say we know exactly how he's going to run the country, and we know from the beginning that we can't accept it and we're going to the barricades, I think is, first of all, premature. And secondly, for an organization like AJC, would rule us out of the game. I mean, at the end of the day, do we want to talk to ourselves? That could be very satisfying because I rarely disagree with myself. Do we want to talk to the bleachers, where we sort of show red meat and they all sort of cheer us on, go, go, go? But in the meantime, we've got a U.S. Israel relationship we want to worry about. We've got America's place in the world that we want to worry about. We've got legislation that's going to come before Congress that we want to worry about. Do we want to be on the playing field or do we want to be in the bleachers? AJC wants to be on the playing field. We're independent, we're nonpartisan, we're centrist, we're non-ideological, but our place is on the playing field as much as we can. And as I said earlier, when When there are issues that come up, the alt-right, accusations against all Muslims, you're going to hear our voice as you have in recent weeks and months. No question about it, no hesitation. But we're going to do it in a way that also tries to engage and not disengage. We're not trying to pat ourselves in the back with our virtue, Mark. The stakes couldn't be higher for our nation. They couldn't be higher for the Jewish people. They couldn't be higher for the world. So we're supposed to be a smart people. I think we need to act smartly.
Beautifully said again. Now, one of the things that has upset many American Jews is the choice of Steve Bannon to be the chief strategist of the Trump administration. And people are looking at Breitbart, which Bannon ran for a period of time. They are claiming he is a white supremacist, that he's a racist, and that he is an anti-Semite. Today, shortly before you and I are speaking here on JBS, Trump met with the New York Times. At that meeting, he disavowed the alt-right. It was something he had already done in a much simpler way when he was on Leslie Stahl's 60 Minutes. But today, he rejected the alt-right. He took a step towards climate change, and he rejected any notion of prosecuting Hillary Clinton. All of these things are sort of in contrast to the way he campaigned. And I want to know the extent to which you feel that in the appointment of Steve Bannon reflects what people worry about. And when you say we should wait and see, what people stand over against you and say, well, you see Steve Bannon. And that already indicates where Donald Trump is. And that should make David Harris concerned. And at the same time, here's Trump moderating seriously the rather extreme stands he took during campaigns. And David, in my entire life, all I've seen is extreme statements during the campaign, and we always move towards the middle once the election is over. But I do want you to comment on the Jewish reaction to the appointment of Steve Bannon. Have you seen anything that suggests to you that not Donald Trump necessarily, but that Steve Bannon is an anti-Semite?
Mark, I've never met Steve Bannon in my life. I had not heard his name at all before a few months ago.
Yes.
I probably never in my life went to Breitbart, or maybe once or twice in my life, that's all. So I have to rely on others here. And obviously there's a lot of reason to be concerned. I get that. There's a lot of reason to be concerned. But it also, frankly speaking, would have been surprising if Bannon, who came in as a strategist for Trump and helped pull off one of the most unexpected political victories in American history, was going to be dumped the next day by the president. Who realistically can expect that? So the question then becomes, what role is he going to play vis-a-vis Donald Trump? Will it be, and which Donald Trump will be the president? Will it be the Donald Trump of the accusations against all the people you spoke about earlier, the women and the disabled and the Latinos? And the president-elect certainly said some pretty horrific things along the way. Will it be that Donald Trump that's president, and that's sort of fueled by the Steve Bannons of the world? Or will it be the Donald Trump who is now reemerging saying, I reject the alt-right. Yes, I said I would scrap Obamacare, but you know what? I'm not really going to scrap it. I'm going to revisit it and repair it. Yes, I said I would build a wall on the Mexican border, but now it's going to be a fence and not a wall, and maybe only in parts. Will it be the Donald Trump who said, let's deport 11 million undocumented Mexicans? Or the Donald Trump who now says, no, it's not going to be 11 million, it's going to be 2 to 3 million, or who knows what the next number is going to be? Is it going to be the Donald Trump who said, let's scrap the Iran deal? Or Donald Trump who says, let's revisit the Iran deal and see how we can make it a little tougher in places where it may be a little too lax? The truth of the matter is that none of us on the outside, and I'm as close to not Donald Trump personally. I don't know him, but geographically, I'm 2.5 blocks from Trump Tower.
Yes.
I mean, our location is about as close as it gets to the sort of second White House today.
Yes.
But I don't think anyone outside that building, Mark, at the end of the day knows which Donald Trump will emerge.
Absolutely, David. Nobody knows anything.
No, and
right.
You know what? You want to make a case for the Donald Trump of Steve Bannon and the alt-right and Breitbart, you'll find some evidence of it. Yes. You want to make a case for Donald Trump who's willing to sort of show flexibility and reinvent himself and move more in a moderate direction, you'll find some evidence of that as well. But we're trying to prejudge a man who may have been as surprised as anyone to win on November. I guess he actually won on November the 9th because it was in the wee hours of the morning, and who's now realizing that campaigning is one thing, governing is something entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to be black and white when you're campaigning. The old expression, where you stand depends on where you sit.
Yes.
When you sit in opposition, when there are no consequences for what you say, when you don't have to take responsibility for one-liners, you just throw them out there. Scrap this, toss that, deport them, build this. It's one thing. Now Donald Trump is coming against the sobering reality of what governing is all about and the complexity of decision-making, domestic policy, foreign policy, you name it. We don't know. We simply don't know which Donald Trump will emerge, and we have nothing to draw upon. Barack Obama had been a state senator for a few years. He had been a U.S. senator for a few years. We had something to look at. Ronald Reagan had been governor of the largest state in America for 8 years. George Bush had been governor of Texas. We had something to look at. Here, we're starting from scratch. So, on the one hand, we got to be vigilant, absolutely, scrutinize everything, you bet. But on the other hand, to kind of foreclose the options and to sort of know in advance that everything he says will be repugnant and regrettable, I think is short-sighted in the extreme, especially for policy organizations, advocacy institutions that need to be nimble and sure-footed. Look, even the countries that he chastised in the campaign, from Mexico to Japan, all realize they can't simply walk away for the next 4 years. They're lining up. They need to meet him, the people around him, to understand where they can do business, where they can't, where they can find room for compromise, where he's going to stand firm. And by the way, a number of those countries are reaching out to AJC as well because of our global relationships, for additional insight, because they're as clueless as the rest of us.
Yes, yes.
So I think, again, I understand fully the concern, the anxiety, the surprise, but it is what it is. Donald Trump will be the president of the United States for at least the next 4 years. We can't push the pause button. There are too many issues of consequence to us as Americans and as Jews, and we've got to figure out how to engage as best we can while retaining our independence of spirit and our right to criticize and confront when appropriate.
I love talking to you. David, there are some people who argue, who know Bannon well, who say he is very pro-Israel. And if he is, what does that say to you? And what do you worry about the Trump administration's relationship with the state of Israel? What do you see for it, if anything at all?
From what we can gather, Mark, Donald Trump and the people around him, those at least that he's brought on board so far, and those in his family with whom he consults, all seem to be extremely well disposed toward Israel. So, on its face, I think we can look forward to a strong, robust, vibrant U.S. Israel relationship. To be very honest, one of my concerns is that there are some in Israel on the right wing of the political spectrum, or the extreme right wing of the political spectrum, who somehow believe that the next 4 years will give them license to act in a way that may not be in Israel's long-term interests. So even as we welcome the pro-Israel stance of the Trump administration as it's emerging, at least so far, and looking back at his speech at AIPAC during the campaign, I just hope that Israel will also have a degree of maturity and responsibility and not seeing this as a license by some, to the right of the prime minister to do things that in the long term may not serve Israel's best interests.
Yes. You know, David, as I listen to you speak, and I understand, everyone should understand, the AJC takes no political position. You understand, David, that almost every organization in the Jewish community is pigeonholed by others as being leaning left, leaning right. There are many, many people in the AJC who have had leadership positions in the Democratic Party. You tend to be an organization where there's a strong representation of the liberal values that are normally associated with the Democratic Party. People who are major figures in the AJC are personal friends of mine who I understand where their perspective is, and you understand where their perspective is. Have you taken any heat because you, as the CEO of AJC, has come out in such a measured, balanced way, urging the American Jewish community to sort of, we're to watch, we're to be vigilant, but we're not to say the sky is falling, and you want to see how does the Trump administration evolve, because every administration evolves. Has this caused problems for you personally inside the AJC?
The short answer to that, Mark, is no. But as a committed centrist and an independent, nonpartisan individual, I'm always in the crosshairs. I mean, we are always in the crosshairs somewhere, whether it usually comes from outside AJC. Occasionally within AJC, someone thinks we're either being too liberal or too conservative. That goes back many years, Mark. But in fact, today, as we speak, I just published an op-ed in the Times of Israel called "A Jewish Centrist, an Endangered Species?"
Yes. Very good.
And it actually goes to the heart of the comment and question you just made.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to explain that there needs to be this space. And frankly, what worries me, Mark, is that we've created a kind of binary world.
Yes.
You're either with us, you're against us. You're either on the left, you're on the right. You're living in one bubble or you're living in the other bubble. And for those of us, and I think we're a vanishing group, who actually genuinely don't want to fall into the bubbles, that bubble or this bubble. You're with me or you're against me school of thought. We're getting shot at from all sides. So there are people on the right, for example, I'm speaking in the Jewish world, who are taking shots at us now, especially because the so-called left-wing Jewish or left-wing AJC reached out to Muslims to form a Muslim-Jewish advisory council, and how could they do such a thing and betray Jewish interests? So while we're fending them off, people on the left are saying, you haven't yet declared war on the Trump administration, and even though you made 6 comments and 7 tweets in the last 10 days on the threatened registry of Muslims or the alt-right meeting at the Reagan building in Washington, but you didn't say something on this other issue, as if, unless we say something on everything that's going on in the world, we've betrayed the cause. So we're getting it from all sides, Mark, but I've been in this job since 1990, and if anyone saw me at a swimming pool or the beach, they'd see all the scars.
Yes.
I mean, the scars from the right, the scars from the left, but I think we're exactly where we should be. I think it's the right place to be. We're in no one's pocket. We're not in an ideological camp. And we've shown courage when courage is needed. When it came to the Iran bill, we stood our ground. We did so respectfully. We stood our ground. But earlier in the Obama administration, and I write about this in my op-ed, we cooperated with the Obama administration right up front in assessing what to do about the Durban process. Mm-hmm. Because when the president took office in 2009, one of his first decisions had to be, will the U.S. participate or not in the so-called Durban process, because a conference was coming up. And the administration invited one of my AJC colleagues to be one of 5 people that would travel to Geneva, study the process, make a recommendation to the U.S. government about what the Obama administration should do. And if you go back, Mark, into the Jerusalem Post and you see the attacks by several well-known Jewish journalists from the right assailing us, accusing us of everything but selling Israel's birthright and going to bed with Hamas, how dare you? How dare you cooperate with the Obama administration on an issue like this? We did. It was the right decision to make. We were part of the decision-making process. We recommended that the administration skip Durban, boycott Durban. It's exactly what they did. But by showing the world that they had done their homework, they convinced other countries to follow suit.
Yes.
So it's a classic. It's a classic thing. If you're a journalist, if you're a couch potato, if you're whoever you are, if you can say what you want without consequences, without taking responsibility, it's cheap and it's easy.
Yes.
But if you're on the playing field and your words and actions do have consequences, Mark, I think you need to think a little more smartly and strategically. And thank goodness for the AJC constituency, the hundreds of thousands of people who are with us on Facebook and who are with us day in and day out. They grasp this. They're not the entire Jewish community. For some, we're too left. For some, we're too right. For some, they simply don't understand what centrism and independence mean because they're caught in that binary world. I respect that. I get that. But AJC has this space. We treasure the space. And thank goodness that those here in the organization want us to keep that space and protect it, all the more so with what's coming.
Well, I thank heaven for you, David Harris. You are very courageous, and you have been your entire career. It is always not only a pleasure, it's an honor to be able to have you speak on JBS. Your voice is one that needs to be heard, and you've expressed in large measure where I am and where JBS is, and I'm very, very flattered to be a part of the enterprise that you and I are both working towards and for, and the betterment of Jewish life, the state of Israel, and really the United States of America. I thank you for always trying to find time to speak with me and the JBS audience. I wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and I hope I see you often and very soon afterward. And in the meantime, you be well and your family be well.
Thanks so much, Mark, and thanks to JBS for the key role it plays in our Jewish life.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye, Mark.
Bye-bye. David Harris, CEO of the American Jewish Committee. And as I say, in so many ways, he reflects where I am. And I consider myself, I say it all the time on JBS, I am a centrist. I believe it's where the Jewish community ought to be. And just as David, I'm not sure I have scars, but I'm getting scathing emails from those on the left who think I'm too pro-Trump, from those on the right who think I'm not pro-Trump, and that I was pro-Hillary. And the reality is I have not in any way betrayed. Nobody knows where I am. You can guess, but I've never come out here and said, and what I have said repeatedly is, the issues deserve to be treated seriously, dispassionately, and with reason and thought. And I hope that that's what you found here on JBS, and then you go make up your own mind. And if you are one who does not need to bully others into agreeing with you, then I feel that you have every right to have a strongest position as you possibly do. As always, my thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland, production coordinator, Serge Goldberg, JBS's associate director, Dara Golub, editors Dennis Golan and John McDevitt, and to the producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.